Hey everyone, Scoobyfoo here, and do you like void damage? No? How about more void damage? Still no. Okay, but what about like even more void damage? Okay, I hear you. What if I said you could make Warmind cells with it? Yeah, now I've got your attention, like moths to an explosive lamp. Since we all like void damage and Warmind cells so much, let's make a build with just like so much of them, without using Ikelos weapons and using lots of Deathbringer. Starting off then, our concrete objective is this. Make a build that can comfortably solo Legend and maybe Master content, with the ability to potentially be used in Grandmasters, Raids, and any other super high level content. Of course, all while abusing Warmind's Decree as much as possible. To that end, we'll need good burst DPS combined with at least acceptable ad clear, though we should end up with much more than that. The base of this build is going to be the seasonal artifact mod Warmind's Decree, which reads, Void splash damage final blows have a chance to create Warmind cells, and boy are we going to be leaning into that. If you don't care for an explanation of why I suggest the gear I do, you can skip to this timestamp for the recap on what's used. For subclass, we'll be using Top Tree Void on Warlock for the extra damage from overcharged Vortex grenades, along with Controverse Hold as our exotic armor piece to give us grenade energy back upon hitting enemies with our overcharged grenade. Aside from Warmind's Decree, our combat mods will be Global Reach and Rage of the Warmind to give our Warmind cells absurd range on their explosions, and to increase the damage of that explosion, along with converting it to solar damage. And with those, we'll run Taking Charge and Protective Light to give us charge with light stacks on picking up Orbs of Power, and to give us damage resistance when we get to low health in exchange for those stacks. For regular armor mods, we'll be using 1 Rocket Launcher and Grenade Launcher Finder, 2 Rocket Launcher Scav mods and whatever relevant resist mods, and an Anti-Barrier or Overload mod with Unstoppable Grenade Launcher in your gloves and Breach and Clear in your bond, more on those two later. Now, weapons. What we want on weapons is simple. Void splash damage. That's it. Now, before you start putting on that truth teller, let me tell you something about one of the best perks in the game, in my opinion, Explosive Payload. This perk increases your damage by about 10% overall through splitting your damage in half and applying that half as area damage with no damage falloff and a slight damage buff. Now, notice the important word there. Area damage. In other words, if you have a void weapon with explosive payload and the explosive portion of the damage kills the enemy, it'll count as a void area kill, giving you progress towards your next Warmind cell. This'll work for any void weapon with explosive payload, but that's where the bad news comes in. There's only 2 void weapons with explosive payload. One of them is the 120 RPM hand cannon Bottom Dollar, which is a random end of match drop from Gambit, which, on top of its absolute thick boy of a perk pool, means I can't really recommend farming for it for no other reason than the extremely low chance you'll actually get a good roll with explosive payload. Also, you have to play Gambit, which just, like, Definitely keep an eye out for a Bottom Dollar with explosive payload if you get it, but I cannot recommend farming for it specifically. That leaves our only other option, the 200 RPM Scout Rifle Vouchsafe. This is in the Dreaming City pool, which means it's not much better to farm, unfortunately. If you're gonna get it, your sources are weekly bounties and quests from Petra on each character, any corrupted eggs you haven't destroyed yet, any Ahamkara bones you haven't collected yet, I would suggest a guide for finding eggs and bones, heroic Blindwell completions, and your first completion of Shattered Throne each week on each character.
Wow, Scoop, that's a lot of drop sources. Must be really easy to get a vouchsafe then.
Yeah, you'd think. Unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, every single drop source in the Dreaming City can drop weapons or armor, which means any given loot drop, it's roughly an 8% chance, once they fix Tiger Spite and Twilight Oath not dropping, that you'll even get a vouchsafe in the first place. Never mind the fact that after you do get one, it's another 16% chance to actually get explosive payload, which is the only reason we even want vouchsafe in the first place. Never mind that once you do get one with explosive payload, you'll want surplus, outlaw, or rapid hit on it as well, which means if you're like me, you get under pressure. Okay, I'll stop. So it's a lot better than trying to get a Bottom Dollar, but far from a good, quick farm, in my opinion. Overall, though, you definitely can farm this one, just be prepared for it to potentially take a while. Or get ridiculously lucky like me and get a nearly perfect one in your second week of farming. Easy.
Well done, Guardian.
Like, I've heard people joke about that stuff.
Oh, vouchsafe. Vouchers.
Can I get off? Vouchers in that chat?
If I'm being truthful though, an explosive payload vouchsafe or bottom dollar is less effective for making Warmind cells than I had initially hoped. The non-explosive portion of the damage ends up killing the enemy surprisingly frequently. So, like, if you need a primary that isn't a hand cannon or scout rifle, or don't have the perk on vouchsafe and bottom dollar, don't feel too bad about not using them. Still worth using the explosive payload weapons if you can, even if they end up being only maybe half as effective as a straight-up Ikelos gun in terms of creating Warmind cells. I mentioned it earlier, but our exotic will be Deathbringer. With the catalyst I got in Season of the Splicer, this thing has become an absolute beast for burst DPS or burst ad clear if you can get the hang of shooting over the enemy to ramp it up, which isn't that hard. It's the perfect rocket launcher for this build. If you have a bottom dollar or vouchsafe with explosive payload, I would run that and an ignition code with Deathbringer. If you don't have a bottom dollar or vouchsafe with explosive payload, I'd run a truth teller and whatever kinetic primary you need at the time. So at this point, I'd hope it's pretty obvious why we'd want to put truth teller on if need be, but why still use ignition code if it doesn't deal void damage? Aside from unstoppable grenade launcher, we've got breach and clear. Damaging a boss, champion, or breaking a combatant's shield with a grenade launcher reloads stowed weapons and, more importantly, weakens the enemy, causing them to take 30% more damage. Unfortunately, this is another artifact mod, so if you're not watching this in Season of the Splicer, this won't be available to you. Of course, Warmind's Decree probably also won't be available in that case, and that's kind of the entire point of this build, so that's a bit bigger of an issue than Breach and Clear not being available. For a recap on our gear, here's all the armor mods we have on. Note that Protective Light has to go in your gloves, Global Reach has to go in your bond, and Rage of the Warmind has to go in your chest piece for those slots to have enough mod space for the other mods we have in them. For weapons, we run Deathbringer, Vouchsafe, or Bottom Dollar with Explosive Payload, and Ignition Code if you have those. If you don't, run Truth Teller and whatever kinetic primary you need. The best way to show this build off is by seeing it in action. For that, I've linked footage of a solo Master Lost sector in the description, or you can stop by a stream on this channel where I'll almost certainly be using this build if I'm on Warlock. From my time playing with it, I think this build is best used solo or in higher difficulty activities like high-level nightfalls, raids, stuff like that where bosses and champions require more work than simply bursting them down in under a second. Simply put, things just die too quickly in strikes to charge a grenade. Nearly done now, let's get into some exact numbers. Cool. Honestly, I love this build. Since I started using it, it's quickly become my favorite thing to run literally wherever capable. Deathbringer is, in my opinion, the best rocket launcher in the game right now, with its total damage, maximum damage per shot, and style being higher than all other rocket launchers, though I admit that aiming above your enemies is somewhat awkward and not all of the 7 orbs will always hit, making it less useful in specific situations. Generally speaking though, this thing butters my biscuits. Adding to that, Warmind's Decree makes Deathbringer go absolutely nuts. Every shot over a crowd of enemies, every shot that kills a champion, they're all more Warmind cells to kill more stuff. Really, even if you don't use this build, go use Deathbringer. Do it. I think that's it now though. Deathbringer is good, Warmind's Decree is good, not that I touched on them much, but charged void grenades are also good. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to drop a quick like on the video. If you want to see more, you can subscribe to know when I upload or start streaming again. And feel free to join the Discord to chat with me directly or follow my Twitter for something. For now though, I've been Scoobyfoo. Thank you for watching.